Okay, so are you not doing this with me?
Yeah.
Okay, he's not standing. Do I have to stand?
Yeah, you guys can stand. Other people. Sorry.
Thanks a lot, Pam.
Okay, so what is culture shock? Let's just go through the definition real quick. It's the anxiety, the feelings of surprise, disorientation, uncertainty, confusion, frustration, etc. felt when people have to operate within a different and unknown culture, like Japan. So basically, it comes because you have difficulty assimilating to the new culture. There are things you take for granted that in your daily life here in America that once you go abroad, you realize, wow, this is so much harder in a different country. And the one that pops off, the one I think of first is just the language and the writing system. Because I think everyone here takes for granted that we can read and write. And when you go over there, if you don't know much Japanese, you won't be able to read anything. And a lot of Jets, that's what they complain about at first. Is like, I can't even read if this is milk in the grocery store. I have no idea. This could be soy milk. They get lots of surprises. Let's just say that. But so it's that difficulty in assimilating and just re-evaluating how you live your life and learning how to do it in a different culture. Anything to add?
Yes. I just wanted to go over a few of the causes that may not seem so obvious for culture shock. Basically, the main cause of culture shock is just of having a feeling of not knowing what to do in your new environment or how to act, and not knowing what's appropriate or inappropriate and when. And basically, the biggest one for me at least is just difficulty with simple tasks like talking to people, using ATM machines or making phone calls, things like that. So just having difficulty with these things that are just like, you don't even think about them here. When you go to Japan, it's like an all-day experience to go get money from the ATM machine or to use the post office. But ultimately, the biggest cause of culture shock, I would say, is when your expectations or your experiences don't meet your expectations. So right now, all of you have some kind of expectation of what it's going to be like when you get to Japan. And when you get there, you can be pretty sure that it's going to be different than what you think. And that's when you have that disconnect of what you're expecting and what you experience. That's when you start getting culture shock.
I'm gonna ask a question. How many people here have been to Japan before? So that's
How
a lot.
many people have lived in Japan?
How many people have worked in Japan before?
How many people have done the JET program before?
This is something that I kind of want to point out. So before I went on the JET program, I had spent 5 years in Japan, which is a pretty good chunk of time. But I still experienced culture shock when I went on the JET program, simply because my experience on JET was very different than all of my previous experiences in Japan. And I think the hardest thing about that was that I assumed I would not experience culture shock because I had so much previous experience. And so just for the people that have been over there before, like, keep that in mind, because being part of a community of teachers or a board of education or a town hall or being a civil servant is still a very different experience than working in a private company or at a university or teaching eikaiwa classes in for a private company or small company. So just keep that in mind. Even if you've had a lot of experience, this can still be it'll be a whole new book for you.
Yeah, it happens. It happens to everyone. And the thing I found with myself is, yes, the first major culture shock that you experience, the first phase, is the strongest. And but I experienced culture shock several other times after that. It's just they're smaller bumps. It's not quite as severe as the first time. So if you make it past that first big, huge whoop, you're gonna be okay.
The big down in that whoop is about February, and
Which
that's
your
about when your
contract.
boss is going to come to you and ask you if you'd like to stay for another year. And so, and I'm serious, I just keep this in mind, because that's, it's cold out if you live anywhere where there's any sort of of snow, and you've been, you know, away for a while, and Christmas is come and gone, and you're starting your, you know, your second trimester of the school year, you know, for you, and it's just, it's kind of one of the harder periods, and then your boss will come over to you with a little piece of paper and ask for your signature to sign up for another year, and you're not so sure at that point if you want to do it or not. But
I would say, as far as that goes, if you are debating in any way whether or not you should stay, you should just stay. Because a lot of Jets, they adjust and springtime comes and they realize that they want to stay. They're like, I made all these friends, I'm doing all these activities, why did I decide to not recontract? So if you are debating whatsoever, if you don't really have anything in the States planned after that first year, recontract.
Yeah, every year gets better and better and better as you learn your community better, as you learn your job better, as you get to know your students better, as you get to know your teachers that you're working with better. And your second and third and fourth and fifth years just get easier and more enjoyable because you're that much more assimilated and that much more familiar with really what your goal is in your community. So it just gets better and better.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll just kind of piggyback on what Jess and Kim were just saying. Even in the US, where you know the culture, if you've ever moved from one city to another, I'm sure you realize that it takes about 2 years for you to even figure out where things are and kind of get used to living there. So you can imagine living in Japan where you don't know the culture that well, or you may not know the culture of your area as well as you think you do. You know, it's going to take probably at least 2 years before you even get used to that. So just keep that in mind. You know, every situation is different. You'll hear that about 10 billion times between now and the time you get to your school. But just keep that in mind when you're thinking about recontracting.
I want to ask some of the panelists up here too to talk about kind of the sense of isolation that can hit you, because that can have a big bearing on culture shock and how you deal with it. And
That's kind of unique in that a lot of times you're placed in rural areas or areas where there's not a lot of other guys or foreigners around. So that is something.
Sure. Yeah, I showed up in a mountain city called Takayama, and I took 3 semesters Japanese, which meant I could say hi. And I remember I took the train out to this town, and they said, all right, here's the grocery store, here's your apartment, plop. And I'm like, holy crap. I'm in my apartment, I don't know anybody, I barely know anything, and I'm eating this strange fast food, and I don't know what's going on. And at that point, I felt completely and utterly alone. But the great thing is that there are plenty of kind-hearted, decent people. And that as you go to your school, you go to community, people invite you to parties, you go to the local bar and you meet more people, and after a while you make friends. And a lot of them, they'll be like really shy, they'll pretend not to speak any English. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's wrong, they actually do, but they're too afraid. And you're too afraid to speak Japanese, they're too afraid to speak English. What are you going to do? Someone's got to try. So
that's when you start drinking.
Yes, yes, yes. The more you drink, the better you are. I don't know if it's an illusion or if it's real, but it seems real. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to sound like a stupid 2-year-old, but I'm going to try anyway. And then I try to speak to them in Japanese. And they go, oh, that's great. And then they try to speak to you in English. And you both sound like idiots, but you're having a great time. And every day you practice, and every day you reach out, and every day you connect, you get more and more friends, you get more connected with the community, and after a while you're not alone. You're always the outsider, you don't quite fit ever, but at least you got friends that care about you. You can go out and have fun, and it's a great time. So just remember, if you're feeling all alone and freaked out at the beginning, that's just the beginning.
Yeah, James brought up a really good point. When there's so much excitement leading up to the point that you depart. I mean, there's, you know, you guys have so much stuff that you're doing right now to get yourselves ready to go, and you're, you know, gathering as much information as you can from your predecessors, and you're talking to your contractor,